to our webinar, How to Weather the Storm in Your 401k Plan. I'm Monica Garver. I'm the Director of Retirement Plan Services here at McKinley Carter. And with me today is Joel Estes from our Dayton office. So let's just set the stage of what we want to accomplish here today. We are going to share with you 6 principles that can help you as a 401k investor to fight the urge to make emotional decisions in these times of market turmoil. Before we get started, however, let's talk a little bit about housekeeping. All your mics have been muted. If you have any questions or comments throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the chat box. We will address all questions and comments at the end of the session. So let's go ahead and get started. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman demonstrated his theory of what we call loss aversion, that most people feel the pain of losing greater than the pain of gain, or greater than enjoyment of a gain. So let's put that into dollars and cents. So with the theory of loss aversion, losing $1,000 hurts more than the fact winning $1,000 might feel good. That's sort of where we are right now in the markets. So our natural instinct is to do something, take some action. We feel so, out of control with this market. What should we do? Well, the purpose of today is to help you walk through these principles so that you, as an investor in the 401k plan, you can focus on the power of how to overcome these emotions and focus on these theories that we're going to go through today that are relevant. They have been researched, solid data, and proven strategies. So with that as a background, go ahead, Joel, if you can, and kick us off with strategies number 1 and 2.
Okay, great. So when you save money for your future, you invest it with one primary goal: to make more money with your money. Eventually, if you build enough money and resources that you no longer have to work to pay your bills, you can afford to retire. Congratulations. With that in mind, we're all saving for retirement, whether to plan for the day we no longer want to work or for the day when our skill set is no longer marketable. Unless we're saving more than half of our paychecks, our ability to retire one day will depend really on our investments making positive returns over a long period of time. The reason I make that statement is I've met some young investors who want to invest their retirement savings into something ultra safe, like a money market that has a low expected return over their working years. Crunching the numbers, it's going to be very difficult for that investor to ever have enough money saved up that they can afford to retire. So in short, the majority of retirement plan investors need a decent average return on their investments in order to be able to retire. That said, most of us have some, if not a significant portion of our money in stocks with a goal of making a good return over our holding periods. Imagine you're standing around the water cooler at work or listening to your uncle at Thanksgiving talking about the stock market. Have you ever heard someone say, "What goes up must come down," talking about the stock market? Such sage wisdom, right? This is a way that some investors who may not understand that much about the markets may comfort themselves when stocks go for a tumble. We'll see a number of data points today that show us that the markets do drop frequently, but they still grow exponentially over the long term. When are we more likely to hear about the markets? When they grow 30% or when they drop 20? Of course, when they drop 20. So if we have markets dropping frequently and we hear more about them when the market's dropping, is it any wonder that your average 401k participant it has their doubts about their ability to be successful investing. As you can see on your screen, stock market declines happen rather frequently. Take the S&P 500 index as an example. This is an index made up of the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the US. And these statistics are pulled from 1952 to 2021. On average, the index drops 5% or more about 3 times a year. It drops 10% or more, which is considered a market correction, about on average once a year. It drops 15% or more about once every 3 years, and it drops 20% or more, which is considered a bear market, on average once every 6 years. And yet, investors who consistently stick with their investments still historically achieve solid positive returns in the market. That stock market growth is often happening quietly when most investors aren't giving much attention to it. In fact, some of the greatest market advances happen when we are still reeling from a recent market drop. That said, our focus today is on how to remain successful in your 401k investing, even when the market is experiencing heightened volatility. One of the main ways to be successful during a market downturn like we're experiencing in 2022 is to not pull your money out of the markets. This may surprise some and even seem illogical to others, but the fact is you will not be successful enough at guessing the next stock market move to be successful outsmarting the markets. In short, it's time in the market that is your greatest ally when investing for long-term goals like retirement. Again, let's use the S&P 500 to see this point made by the data. In this example, a hypothetical investor invested $1,000 into an investment that tracks the S&P 500 index on January 1st of 2012. Had they left the investment alone until December 31st of 2021, or a full 10 years, the investment would have grown to $3,790. Let's pause there. As you reflect on the last decade, has it been smooth sailing for stock investors? Have we seen multiple crises impact the markets, including a global economic shutdown from a global pandemic? This is real data from a major stock index that says in the course of a very choppy 10 years, this investor would have more than tripled that original investment. Not that you'd expect to replicate that kind of performance consistently, but I bet some of you are surprised that times have been that good. To test how investors would perform who try to time the market by pulling out in the midst of a market panic with the intent to get back in when the market settles back down, we see what happened to this investor if they just missed out on the best 10 days in the market, the best 20, 30, or 40 days out of that 10 years. Check it out. Missing just 10 days in the market cut resulting investment value nearly in half. Missing just 40 days invested in 10 years literally erased nearly all return on the investment. Sure, drops happened, but the results were far superior and the investor most successful who left it alone to grow. Before we move on to the next point of education, let's relate this concept to today's market environment. Every S&P 500 decline of 15% or more from 1929 to 2020 has been followed by a recovery. The average return in the first year after each of these declines was 55%. No one ever knew when the market would bottom out in each of these historical examples. And very much similar today, no one knows when this market cycle will bottom out either. But from a data point like that, A down market is a worse time to pull out, as it actually may be the best time to be an investor. Monica, back to you.
Thanks, Joel. We're now going to turn our attention back to Kahneman and his 2002 work on behavioral economics. So behavioral economics itself is a field that investigates how individuals make financial decisions. A key finding of behavioral economics is that people often act irrationally. Emotional reactions to market events are perfectly normal, that we're feeling concerned. We open our statements, we feel a loss. However, acting on those emotional reactions is a whole nother thing. Participants should expect to feel nervous when market declines, but it's those actions that you take during these periods that can mean the difference between investment success and shortfall. We're going to now examine 3 fundamentals of behavioral economics. The first is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is defined as a tendency to seek information that supports our beliefs. Joel, could you go ahead and start the video so that we can learn a little bit more?
It's often said that seeing is believing, but what we see may not always be a true reflection of reality. Sometimes we only see the things we choose to see because they support our opinions. This is called confirmation bias and can lead to the dangerous mindset of overconfidence. An investor might be more likely to look for information that supports his original ideas about an investment, rather than look for information that could contradict it. For example, an investor might hear about a hot stock from a friend at a barbecue or overhear a conversation at work, so he researches it to prove its potential is real. His eyes are open to the green flags like growing cash flow and low debt-equity ratio, but he ignores the red flags, such as dwindling markets and the loss of critical customers. It can be difficult to encounter something without having a preconceived opinion. This first impression can be hard to shake because of confirmation bias. Never be afraid to challenge yourself. Better yet, get someone else to challenge you.
Our second bias is what we call anchoring bias. And anchoring bias is defined by making decisions based upon recent information, only recent information. So you anchor your thoughts based on a current reference point, like the decline of the market. That's all we see. That's our reference point currently. The news, television, radio, it's all talking about negativity within the market. And the third bias is called availability bias, sort of similar to the others, where we subconsciously base our decisions based upon what is available, the information that is available. So currently, the market is bearish. However, availability bias can put that bear on steroids, and that's all that we can think about is just overall overwhelming negativity, and that this downturn is permanent. So recognizing these biases before they become hazardous is extremely important. Economists tell us that recent events can carry an outside influence on our perceptions and, worse, our decisions. So now let's turn our attention to the emotional investing on the screen. Warren Buffett has a famous quote: "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." That quote by Buffett addresses the emotional rather than the financial aspect of investing. Evidence from numerous studies on behavioral finance suggests that emotion and the negative actions that we might take of emotional biases can cost investors 2 to 3% a year of foregone investment gains. Before you dismiss this as being unsubstantial or inconsequential, let me just hit you with this fact. You have an investor that on average earns 7% versus that person that may have made decisions based upon emotional biases, therefore losing 2 to 3%. That investor that did not take action can have, in a 25-year period, a doubling of their net worth or their investments over that investor that perhaps took that negative action. Let's review this chart, starting with the left with optimism, impatience, and excitement. There's a natural aversion to loss as we are in this part of the cycle. We view losses at this point not necessarily as loss, but as a missed opportunity. And entering the market now seems to be a good idea because we're running with the herd. And plus, all the news is positive. So at some point we reach overconfidence, and as Joel said, we never know when that is. And psychologically, when we get to overconfidence in a bull market, it can sort of shield us from anything negative. Just as the box below the bull market says, motivated by excitement and overconfidence, investors often buy at the top of a bull market, just in time to see their investments decline, which then puts us into this period of denial. Oh, this can't be happening. However, as the market declines then continue, we might see investors start to feel regret, fear, or even panic. At the bottom of the market, or when we enter a bear market, as we have now, many investors no longer have the resilience to stay invested. Their anxiety and their stress might cause them to make a bad decision, and they might sell at the very worst time. But as we just reviewed with you, it's two decisions. Remember that chart that Joel showed us about missing those days? So if an investor, based upon emotions, sell, that investor also has to make the decision as to when to buy back. So it's two decisions, both of which are very difficult and both of which will impact long-term investment gains. Furthermore, if you were to take action at this point of despair, you may swear off investing altogether. Here's the problem with that, however. It's very difficult to perhaps meet your goals while only achieving rates of return seen in money market or safe vehicles, just as Joel had already mentioned earlier. So, as the slide says, emotional investing can be hazardous. Let's move on to how important it is to stick to your plan of making your contributions. A carefully constructed retirement plan is another way to avoid short-sighted investment decisions. So let's look at the chart in front of us. This is a chart reflecting the fact that now things are on sale. What we're saying is that the left bar, the color of my shirt, is giving an indication of the average cost per share. So in month one, it's 13.64%. The royal blue or baby blue bar then shows the number of shares one can purchase at that average cost per share. As we see the average cost per share decline, as illustrated here in months 8, 9, and 10, we are purchasing more shares upon which we will have future growth because the shares are on sale. Anybody who knows me knows I love a good sale. So again, buying shares while their cost is declining can have a huge benefit in the long run. The other thing that we want to talk about while making a plan is you might actually consider increasing your contribution if you can at this point, because again, you're able to be purchasing more shares as the price per share is reduced. Back to you, Joel, to talk about diversification.
All right. So now you've decided to weather the storm by not pulling your investments out and by continuing to make your contributions into your 401k, if not increasing them. Now let's talk about how to be an efficient investor. And by efficient, I mean how you can strategically be best rewarded for the risk you're taking. This will be a challenge to investors who attempt to chase good returns by trying to figure out which pocket of the market they think will do the best and putting all their eggs in that one basket. Failing to be appropriately diversified will, over the long term, be an inefficient and less effective way to achieve the best results as an investor. This could be caused by either guessing the wrong investment now or in the future, or you may pick what ends up being a decent choice long term, but you took unnecessary risk along the way. Some investors make mistakes in picking their investments by opening their statements, looking at those options that went up the most in the last quarter or the last year, and adding the most to those options. This is what we call in our industry chasing returns. Always chasing, but always lagging behind and possibly underperforming because of it. Appropriate diversification across multiple investment categories like stocks, bonds, and cash, investment styles like large versus small companies, growth versus value-oriented companies, and regions like US versus international developed versus emerging markets is how we can reduce the risk necessary to achieve successful results. Diversification is the most efficient way to get a solid return over the long term while minimizing the risk taken to achieve it. The reason this is the case is that no one can know tomorrow's winners or losers based upon yesterday's results. The chart that you see on your screen is stacking up the returns of 7 major investment styles, each of the last 10 calendar years, in order from best performing asset class at the top to worst performing at the bottom. As you can see, the winners and losers trade places rather frequently, but owning a small piece of the pie in each of the asset classes will smooth out the returns each year. This can especially help in years when pockets of the markets are in decline, as the investor enjoys less of a drop and a better position, therefore, to grow from. For those investors who prefer a hands-off approach to investing, most 401k plans do have one-stop shop investment options, that are available, really that provide the investor with good diversification using only a single investment option. Examples of these well-diversified standalone investments include balance funds or target risk funds or target date funds. Investors may also choose from among the less diversified options in their fund menu that, when brought together, may represent a well-diversified allocation of funds. Of course, if you're unsure whether your personal 401k allocation is diversified, feel free to reach out to your McKinley Carter team who's prepared to educate you on your personal diversification. Monica, back to you for a look at the long-term focus.
Thanks, Joel. And before we leave this, just want to remind all of you that the majority of the plans at McKinley Carter have what we call qualified default investment alternatives, which embrace target date funds, target risk funds, or balanced funds. So the default option is already pre-diversified. So in case we haven't already convinced you to focus on the long term, we're going to finish up with a couple slides just to bring that point home. So what you see in front of you is a chart, again, using the S&P, of rolling 10-year average annual returns from 1937 to 2021. So what we see are rolling 10-year periods, with the average during this period of time of all rolling 10-year periods to equal what you're seeing in the middle in purple of 10.57. But to bring this point a little bit more granular, let's look at two specific periods of time. Let's first look at what we call, the Depression year, from August 31st, 29 through August 31st, 39, the market experienced during that decade a negative 5.03 return. Not surprising based upon what we know historically had occurred. Let's then look at every 10-year period after that, 39 to 49, 40 to 50, so forth and so on, all the way through, and you'll see that that average was 15.38. Interesting. Let's now look at a completely different period of time, and that's from the mid-60s to the mid-70s. During that period of time, the market was relatively flat, and here we're talking September 64 to September 74. However, again, looking at that rolling 10-year period, 74 to 84, 75 to 85, all the way through 83 to 93, those rolling 10-year periods averaged almost the exact same, 15.74. If we look at the entire period then, most recently ending with 12/31/21, that decade of 10 years was an average of 16.44. So again, the focus is on the long term taking priority. The last chart we want to review with you this afternoon is what we call our red dot chart. The red dots on this chart reflect the intraday lows during any period of time. So Joel, if you could advance us to that chart, thank you so much. So what we have on this chart is we have these red dots, or these red points, representing intraday lows. At any point, we're always going to see the market is never straight up, never, ever. So we're going to see all these periods of time where we have these lows. You can see this low of negative 49 was during the financial crisis of 08-09. This period here of 34 was during COVID. So it's not uncanny for us to have intra-year drops of 14%. However, what we really want to take away, looking at this chart again, is the long-term focus taking priority. In that, the average annual returns were positive in 32 out of 42 years. So again, intra-period drops are part of investing. I think one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about emotional investing is to be a grounded emotional investor, you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And these intra-year declines will make us uncomfortable as investors. We just need to keep our eye on the ball and focus on our long-term priorities. So to recap what we've spent these last 30 minutes or so sharing with you are these key takeaways. Again, market declines, just part of investing. Time in the market, not trying to time the market. Emotional investing, including confirmation bias, anchoring bias. They are not your friends and can be hazardous to your investment health, your portfolio health. Continue those contributions. If possible, increase them and keep with it. Stick to the contribution deferrals. Joel talked about the need and the importance of diversifying. We're here to help you. As he mentioned, should you have any questions about the diversified nature of your individual 401k, and again, long-term always takes priority. We want to thank you so much for joining us. Again, please reach out to your McKinley Carter team. We're here to help you, answer any questions that you have, walk you through, listen to you, hold your hands, whatever it takes. We're here to help. Again, on behalf of McKinley Carter, we thank you for the opportunity to be of service and to serve you in your retirement journey. Thank you and good afternoon.